My name is Morgan, and at 24, I was embarrassingly late to the driving game. Most of my friends had gotten their licenses at 16 or 17, but growing up in New York City, I'd never needed to drive. The subway took me everywhere I needed to go, and when that failed, there were always taxis or ride shares. It wasn't until I landed a job at a publishing house in a Boston suburb that I realized my lack of driving skills had become a legitimate handicap. When I moved to Massachusetts, I initially thought I could manage with public transportation, but the commute from my affordable apartment to the office was a nightmare, a patchwork of buses and trains that took nearly 2 hours each way. After a month of this grueling routine, I finally admitted defeat and signed up for driving lessons at Parkway Driving Academy. My first impression of Adam Calloway, the instructor assigned to me, was that he didn't fit the driving instructor stereotype at all. Instead of the middle-aged, slightly paunchy man I'd expected, Adam was in his early 30s, with broad shoulders, dark hair cut short on the sides but longer on top, and the kind of jawline that belonged in a razor commercial. He greeted me with a firm handshake and a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "First-time driver?" he asked, leading me to a white sedan with "student driver" emblazed on its sides. "Is it that obvious?" I replied, trying not to show how nervous I was. "You're gripping your paperwork like it's a life preserver," he observed with a chuckle. "Relax. Everyone's terrible at first. That's why I have my own brake pedal." There was something reassuring about his casual confidence, and I found myself smiling as I slid into the driver's seat, adjusting it to accommodate my lanky frame. "Good," Adam said, settling into the passenger seat. "Let's start with the basics. This is your steering wheel." "I think I've got that part," I laughed, just making sure. His eyes met mine, a flash of humor in their hazel depths. "You'd be surprised what some people don't know." Our first lesson focused on simple maneuvers in an empty parking lot: starting, stopping, turning. Adam was patient but firm, correcting my grip on the steering wheel or gently pressing his hand over mine to demonstrate the proper way to turn. "Not so tight," he advised, his fingers warm against my knuckles. "You're strangling the wheel. Just guide it." I tried to focus on his instructions rather than the way my skin tingled where his hand had touched mine. It had been months since my last relationship ended, and apparently my body was reacting to any human contact like a plant turning towards sunlight. "Sorry," I muttered, loosening my death grip. "I'm just nervous about controlling a 2-ton metal death machine." Adam laughed, the sound rich and unexpectedly appealing. "That's actually a healthy attitude. The students who scare me are the ones who think they're invincible. You'll be fine, Jack." Something about the way he said my name made me glance over at him, but his attention was already back on my driving position. "Seat's still not right," he said, reaching between my legs to find the adjustment lever. "You need to be able to fully depress the clutch." I held my breath as his arm brushed against my thigh, telling myself this was completely professional and my reaction was ridiculous. He was just doing his job, and here I was getting flustered like a teenager. Over the next few weeks, I had 3 more lessons with Adam. Each time, I found myself looking forward to seeing him, enjoying his dry humor and clear instructions. He had a way of making even my most embarrassing mistakes seem fixable, offering correction without judgment. During our 4th lesson, Adam decided I was ready for actual street driving. Rain pattered against the windshield as I navigated through suburban roads, wipers slashing across my field of vision in a hypnotic rhythm. "You're doing great," Adam said, as I successfully completed a 3-point turn. "Much better than last week." "Thanks to your instruction," I replied, unable to keep the pride from my voice. "Taking a right at this intersection," he directed, pointing ahead. I slowed down, checking for traffic, and began the turn. Suddenly, a cyclist appeared from nowhere, darting across the street. I slammed on the brakes, the car lurching to a halt. "Fuck!" the word burst from me, as the cyclist continued on, seemingly oblivious to how close I'd come to hitting him. "It's okay," Adam said quickly. "You did exactly what you should have done. Good reaction time." My heart was hammering in my chest, adrenaline making my hands shake on the wheel. Adam placed his hand over mine, steadying it. "Deep breath," he instructed. "These things happen. The important part is you were paying attention and responded correctly." I nodded, trying to calm my racing pulse, achingly aware of his hands still covering mine. When I looked over, his eyes were on me, concern evident in their depths. "You good to continue?" he asked, his voice slightly rougher than usual. "Yeah," I managed, clearing my throat. "I'm good." He withdrew his hand slowly, and I immediately missed his warmth. "Let's head back to the academy," he suggested. "I think that's enough excitement for one day." As we drove back in companionable silence, rain drumming on the roof, I found myself stealing glances at his profile. The straight nose, the shadow of stubble on his jaw, the way his lips pressed together in concentration as he made notes on his clipboard. When we arrived at the academy parking lot, Adam turned to me with a smile. "Despite the near miss, you did well today. You're a natural." "Now I know you're just being nice," I laughed. "I'm the least natural driver you've ever had." "Not even close. I once had a student who confused the gas and brake pedals 3 times in one lesson. You're practically Mario Andretti in comparison." I unbuckled my seatbelt, reluctant to end our time together. "Same time next week?" "Actually," Adam said, checking his calendar, "I need to reschedule. My sister's getting married this weekend, and I'll be out of town. How about Tuesday instead of Thursday?" "Tuesday works," I agreed, then added impulsively, "Have fun at the wedding." Something hesitation crossed his face. "Thanks. It'll be interesting. First family gathering since I came out." The casual admission hung in the air between us. "I hope it goes well," I said carefully, not wanting to overstep, but wanting him to know I understood. "Families can be complicated." "That's putting it mildly," he replied, with a wry smile. "My dad's still in the denial stage, and my mom keeps sending me links to articles about how sexuality is fluid, like she's hoping I'll wake up straight one day." "My mom went through a similar phase," I offered. "She's better now, but there was definitely a year where she introduced me as her son who just hadn't met the right girl yet." Adam's eyes widened slightly. "You're gay?" I nodded, suddenly self-conscious. "Since birth, though. I didn't figure it out until high school." His expression was hard to read. Surprise, certainly, but something else, too. Something that made my pulse quicken. "Well," he said finally, "guess we have more in common than I thought." He glanced at his watch. "I should get inside. My next student will." "My next student will be arriving." "Right," I said, gathering my things and opening the car door. "See you Tuesday." "Tuesday," he confirmed, and I could have sworn his eyes lingered on mine a beat longer than necessary. The weekend dragged interminably as I found myself thinking about Adam more than I cared to admit. I told myself it was ridiculous to develop feelings for my driving instructor, a classic case of misplaced attraction born from the intimate setting of the car and the literal hands-on nature of his teaching. By Tuesday, I was determined to maintain a strictly professional relationship. That resolution lasted approximately 5 minutes into our next lesson. "We're going to practice parallel parking today," Adam announced as I settled into the driver's seat. "My nemesis," I groaned. "I've been dreading this." "It's not as hard as people make it out to be," he assured me. "It's all about angles and knowing your car's dimensions." He directed me to a quiet street with empty parking spaces and walked me through the technique step by step. Despite his clear instructions, my first few attempts were disastrous, either too far from the curb or at an awkward angle. "Let me show you," Adam said after my 4th failed attempt. "Scoot over." I moved to the passenger seat and he slid behind the wheel, demonstrating the perfect parallel park in one smooth motion. His hands moved confidently on the wheel, his eyes checking mirrors with practiced ease. "See? Not so complicated." "Easy for you to say," I muttered. "You've been driving for what, 15 years?" "Something like that," he acknowledged. "Your turn again." Back in the driver's seat, I attempted to replicate what he'd shown me, but misjudged the distance to the curb. Adam shook his head. "You're not checking your side mirror enough. Here." He leaned over, his shoulder pressing against mine as he adjusted my side mirror. "Now try again." I was acutely aware of his proximity, the faint scent of his cologne, something woody with hints of citrus. Forcing myself to concentrate, I made another attempt, this one marginally better. "Closer," he encouraged, "but you're turning the wheel too early. Let me guide you." Without warning, his hand covered mine on the steering wheel, his touch sending an electric current up my arm. "Like this," he said, his voice close to my ear as he helped me execute the turn. Our faces were inches apart, and when I glanced over, his eyes met mine. There was no mistaking the heat in them now, confirming that whatever was happening between us wasn't one-sided. "I should probably mention," he said quietly, his hand still resting on mine, "that instructors aren't supposed to date students." My heart skipped. Is that a rule or just a guideline? A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Technically a rule, but you only have 3 more lessons until your road test." "And after that?" I asked, hardly daring to breathe. "After that," he replied, slowly withdrawing his hand, "you wouldn't be my student anymore." The remainder of the lesson passed in a haze of charged glances and brief touches that could be dismissed as instructional, but felt deliberate. When we returned to the academy, Adam handed me my progress report with a phone number scrawled at the bottom. "In case you have any questions before next week's lesson," he explained, his casual tone belied by the intensity in his eyes. I tucked the paper into my pocket, trying to suppress a ridiculous grin. "I might have a lot of questions." "I figured you might," he replied with a matching smile. That night I stared at his number for a solid hour before working up the courage to text him. I kept it simple. "This is Jack. Just wanted to make sure I had the right number in case of those questions we discussed." His reply came minutes later. "Now I have your number too. For purely educational purposes, of course." What followed was a week of increasingly less professional text messages, ranging from driving tips to personal questions, to flirtatious banter that left me counting the hours until our next lesson. When Thursday arrived, I was both excited and nervous as I slid into the driver's seat. Adam greeted me with a smile that felt like a secret between us. "Highway driving today," he announced. "Think you're ready?" "As I'll ever be," I replied, adjusting my mirrors with newfound confidence. The highway was intimidating at first, multiple lanes, faster speeds, more aggressive drivers, but Adam's calm guidance kept me steady. An hour into the lesson, he directed me to take an exit I didn't recognize. "Where are we going?" I asked, following his instructions to turn onto a tree-lined road. "Scenic route," he replied casually. "Good practice for rural driving, different challenges than city streets." The road curved through dense woods, eventually leading to a small clearing overlooking a lake. The late afternoon sun sparkled on the water, casting golden light through the windshield. "Pull over here," Adam instructed, pointing to a gravel turnout. I did as he asked, putting the car in park and turning to him with a questioning look. "This doesn't seem like standard curriculum." "Consider it an advanced lesson," he said, unbuckling his seatbelt. "Sometimes you need to know where to stop, not just how to keep going." My heart was racing as he reached over and turned off the ignition. "Adam, we still have 20 minutes left in your scheduled lesson," he said quietly. "We can spend it driving if you want, or we can sit here and talk. Your choice." "Talk," I decided immediately. He smiled, shifting to face me more fully. "I've never done this before with a student." "I mean, I believe you," I said, because I did. Everything about him spoke of integrity despite this bending of the rules. "3 more lessons," he reminded me. "Then your road test. And then I won't be your student anymore," I finished. "Right." His eyes dropped to my mouth, then back up. "But right now you still are." I knew what he was saying, that whatever was developing between us had to wait. That was the responsible choice, the ethical one. I respected him for it, even as disappointment washed through me. "I understand," I said, trying to hide my deflation. Adam looked out at the lake, his profile strong against the setting sun. "My ex-boyfriend used to say I was too rigid about rules," he said, after a moment that lingered, "that I never knew when to let go." "Was he right?" I asked. Adam turned back to me, indecision clear in his eyes. "Usually, yes." Before I could respond, he leaned across the center console, his hand coming up to cup my jaw. "But sometimes," he murmured, "the rules don't account for everything." The first brush of his lips against mine was tentative, questioning. When I responded, sliding my hand to the back of his neck to pull him closer, the kiss deepened into something hungry and certain. His thumb traced my cheekbone as his mouth moved against mine, and I was distantly aware of making a small, needy sound that would have embarrassed me if I had been capable of embarrassment in that moment. When we finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Adam rested his forehead against mine. "I've been wanting to do that since you nearly hit that cyclist." I laughed softly. "Nothing says romance like vehicular near misses." "You looked so vulnerable and determined at the same time," he explained, his fingers tracing patterns on the nape of my neck. It was compelling. "I was terrified," I admitted, "both of hitting someone and of disappointing you." "You couldn't disappoint me if you tried," he said softly, then pulled back with a sigh. "But this, us, needs to wait officially." I nodded, understanding, even through the haze of desire. "3 more lessons." "3 more lessons," he confirmed. "Think you can handle that?" "As long as there are more unofficial scenic routes," I replied, earning a grin that made my heart flip. The drive back to the academy was charged with new awareness, our conversation lighter but underlaid with promise. When we arrived, Adam handed me my lesson report as usual, but his fingers lingered against mine during the exchange. "Same time next week?" he asked, his professional tone at odds with the heat in his eyes. "I wouldn't miss it," I assured him. The following 3 weeks were an exquisite form of torture. During our official lessons, Adam was the consummate professional, maintaining appropriate boundaries, even as his eyes communicated something entirely different. But each lesson ended with a detour to our spot by the lake, where professionalism gave way to increasingly passionate encounters confined to the front seat of the car. We talked too about our families, our pasts, our aspirations. I learned that Adam had come out late, at 28, after years of trying to convince himself he was bisexual to appease his conservative family. He'd been a driving instructor for 5 years after leaving a soul-crushing corporate job that paid well but left him miserable. I told him about my dreams of becoming a fiction editor, my complicated relationship with my well-meaning but occasionally clueless parents, and my disastrous previous relationship with a man who had been firmly closeted and ultimately unwilling to build a real life together. "I need you to know," Adam said during one of these conversations, his fingers intertwined with mine, "that I'm not hiding. If we do this, really do this, after your road test, it won't be a secret." "I wouldn't want it to be," I assured him. "I'm well past the sneaking around stage of my life." The day of my road test arrived with a mixture of anticipation and genuine nervousness about the test itself. Adam wasn't allowed to be my examiner. Conflict of interest, he explained. So I was assigned to a stern-faced woman named Marjorie, who seemed determined to find fault with my driving. "Good luck," Adam said as I prepared to leave with her. "You've got this." His quiet confidence bolstered me through parallel parking, three-point turns, and highway merging. When Marjorie finally announced that I had passed, relief flooded through me, both for the achievement itself and for what it meant for Adam and me. I found him waiting in the office, pretending to do paperwork but clearly watching for my return. When I flashed him a thumbs up, his answering smile was brilliant. "Congratulations, Jack," he said formally, standing to shake my hand for the benefit of the other instructors. "Well deserved." "Thanks for all your help," I replied, matching his professional tone while squeezing his hand a bit longer than necessary. He handed me an envelope containing my certificate. "Everything you need is in there. You can take it to the DMV to get your license processed." "Great," I said, lingering awkwardly, unsure how to proceed with other people around. Adam glanced at his watch. "My last lesson canceled. I was about to grab coffee if you'd like to join me to celebrate your success." "I'd like that," I agreed, my heart racing at the simple invitation that represented so much more. 20 minutes later, we sat across from each other at a small cafe 3 blocks from the driving academy, the pretense of merely celebrating my licensing achievement quickly abandoned. "So," Adam said, stirring his coffee, "you're officially not my student anymore." "And you're officially not my instructor," I confirmed, unable to stop smiling. "Which means," he continued, reaching across the table to take my hand, "I can officially ask you to dinner, a real date, not just talking in my car by the lake." "I'd like that," I said, turning my hand to lace our fingers together, "though I have fond memories of that car." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "Me too, but I'd prefer to get to know you without a gear shift between us." "When, tonight?" he suggested, "unless that's too soon." "Tonight is perfect," I assured him. And it was. Dinner led to a walk along the Charles River, which led to a first kiss outside the constraints of professional boundaries, which eventually led to me inviting him up to my apartment. In the months that followed, we built something neither of us had expected to find through driving lessons. Adam helped me shop for my first car, a used Subaru that he deemed reliable enough for a new driver. I attended family gatherings with him, offering quiet support as he navigated still complicated relationships with parents who were trying, albeit imperfectly, to accept their son's sexuality. 6 months after my road test, as we drove back from a weekend visiting friends in Maine, Adam glanced over at me behind the wheel. "Your right turn signal is still on," he noted with a hint of instruction that occasionally crept into his voice. I flicked it off, rolling my eyes. Once an instructor, always an instructor. "Force of habit," he laughed, "but your driving has improved impressively." "I had a good teacher," I replied, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "The best," he agreed immodestly, bringing his hand to his lips, "though I was definitely distracted during those lessons." "Oh, really? I hadn't noticed." We fell into comfortable silence as miles of highway stretched before us. Eventually, Adam spoke again, his tone more serious. "I've been thinking about something." "Hmm?" I prompted, eyes still on the road. "My lease is up next month." I glanced at him briefly, heart suddenly racing with possibility. "Is it?" "It is. And your place is closer to the academy, and we already spend most nights together anyway." I smiled, happiness expanding in my chest. "Are you asking to move in with me, Adam Calloway?" "I'm suggesting it might be the logical next step," he replied, a hint of nervousness beneath his casual tone. "If you think it's not too soon." I signaled carefully, pulled onto the shoulder of the highway, and put the car in park. "What are you doing?" Adam asked, surprised. "Using one of the most important lessons you taught me, knowing when to stop, not just how to keep going." I leaned across the center console, a motion that felt both new and familiar, and kissed him deeply. "Yes," I said when we parted. "Move in with me." His answering smile was brighter than oncoming headlights. "Are you sure? Your apartment is small." "I'm sure. Besides, I added with a grin, I've already proven we can make good use of small spaces. As I pulled back onto the highway, Adam's hand resting comfortably on my knee, I reflected on how unexpected turns could lead to the most beautiful destinations. A year ago, I couldn't drive and was living a solitary life in a new city. Now I navigated highways with confidence and was building a home with someone who had started as an instructor but had become so much more. Some lessons, it turned out, went far beyond.